everyone. I'm Dale Gann, president of the Greater Denver Gem and Mineral Council. And our last speaker of today is Ryan Bowling, and he is going to introduce himself because I don't know this gentleman. So he will tell you a little bit, but he's going to talk about the fantastic fluorite of the Alps. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. So my name is Ryan Bowling. I'm a graduate of Colorado School of Mines and spent my time in the field extensively field collecting and have experience with the Alps a lot and study it a lot. So what I'm going to present to you today is really a high-level overview of some of the most famous finds of fluorites in the Alps, and then some obscure finds that you may not know of, because everybody really knows pink fluorites, right? But some more obscure finds that you may not be aware of. I've spent a lot of time in Switzerland. Haven't spent a lot of time in the Mont Blanc area, but a lot of time collecting in Switzerland and have experience, and I can speak to some of the dangers and excitement and the thrills of finding some great fluorites. So with that being said, we'll begin. I'm going to start off by showing you just the environment that it comes from. We're going to talk about this. So basically, I mentioned before Switzerland. So we're going to really talk more about the Swiss Central Alps right here. And then we'll talk and focus on Mont Blanc in that area right there, the Mont Blanc massif. So those are the two areas that really most of the fluorites that everybody sees comes from, okay? But there are a couple other areas that folks aren't as familiar with. And I show Bergell in Switzerland here, but I'm going to go a little bit more south of there to Buera in Italy, and then I'm going to talk about the Hauturm Mountains in Austria just briefly. So with that being said, we'll start. I'm going to show you the environment that we're talking about. So most of the fluorites that you find in the Alps come from usually about 3,400 meters to about 4,000 meters. And they come in from this environment right here. As my good Strahler friend says in Switzerland, places like this are kind of spicy. And, you know, a lot of times you're in these areas, you're not using ropes, or a lot of times, you know, people today tie off lines and use ropes. But the old timers, they used to not use a lot of ropes. And so the one thing that goes with that is you have no safety net, and you hear a lot of deaths associated with collecting fluorites because you're in this environment, this very exposed environment. The other thing about this exposed environment that you'll see is it's really a secret society almost with the fluorite and Alpine Strahlers, because you're so exposed, they don't want to tell you where they're finding their best stuff. It's a little different in Switzerland. They have a code to where you'll see you mark a pocket, and the ethics code is that you don't mess with anybody's pocket. That's theirs for every year that they mark that, okay? It is that way in France a little bit, but not like Switzerland. So like I said, it's really hard to get information about where a pocket was found, where, you know, when it was found, what's coming out. And so there's a lot of finds that I'll show you that are more famous, but there are a lot of one-off finds that you will never know about, and I can't even talk about. So with that being said, you know, most people never get up on a cliff at 3,800 meters. It's just not doable for a lot of folks, so they never get to see an Alpine fluorite pocket. With that being said, this is a typical Alpine fluorite pocket. Usually they're not this clean, but this happens to be a very dry pocket. And you can see the crevice and the leaching of the feldspar. So this happens to be in a granitic environment. There's two environments that we'll talk about, granitic environments and then gneissic environments. So this is the majority of where you see the fluorites come from in the Alps, is the granitic environment. So once you get them out, this is, you know, you get them out, you're at 3,700 meters, you got to get them down. And, you know, we're all perfection mineral collectors, and, you know, we look for damage and chips and everything, and you can see all the dirt that's associated with it and try and put it on your pack, and you got to pack it all the way down to the valley floor. And usually the valley floor is anywhere between 800 and 1,200 meters, sometimes a little higher. And this is what you're dealing with. So we're lucky that we get these. With this being said, I'm going to start off with probably the most famous find. Traditionally, this was the find that most people knew before a lot of the other most recent finds. And the reason being is because Peter Bancroft featured this in his book, Gem and Crystal Treasures. And this is the 1966 Rufibach clef. And this is really in the Grimsel Pass area, more central Switzerland. And it's on a mountain called the Gneiss. And these are pictures from Ernst Rufibach's museum. And you can see the family bringing the plates out, using timbers to, basically shore up this system. And I will say this is like more of a cleft system. So this is a big series of pockets, and they pinch and they swell, and they pinch and they swell, and they worked this for many, many, many years. It was really known for, associated fluorite and smoky quartz. That's what it became famous for, and probably some of the most famous pieces of Switzerland pink fluorite and quartz are from this find. So with that being said, this is in Ernst's museum, and you can see all the associated pieces with that, really nice smoky quartz with associated pink fluorites. Now, the one thing about these pink fluorites is they're modified. So they're octahedrons, but they're modified. They have modifications on the edges, but they still keep the octahedral form. And most of the fluorites that I'm going to show you are octahedral, and that's because they're high temperature environment fluorites. So a lot of the replacement fluorites that you see in Illinois and those areas, they're not octahedral, they're square, cubic, and that's because they're low temperature. These are high temperature environments. So there's two aspects to this find. I showed you the ones on smoky quartz, and then I mentioned before that you get a lot of the matrix pieces that have the feldspar leached out with the quartz leached out as well. So this is this one right here. So this find actually had two different kind of looks to it. It had a look of associated on the matrix and then also associated on the quartz crystals. And this is probably the most famous piece from that find. It was on oops, I gotta go back. It was on a postcard that they used to sell in the museum. So a lot of tourists and folks used to get those postcards and send those around to the world. And like I said, that's probably the most famous, but it's a very small piece. It's only about 5 centimeters total length. But you can see the modifications on the octahedrons, and then also another trait of this pocket is you get the pink, but you also get purple edges on it. So this is a couple more pieces that you'll see. The one on the right is in the MIM Museum in Lebanon. The one on the left is, it was with Rob Levinsky, and I'm not sure where it's at now. So this is the Rufibach cleft, and like I said, this is one of the most famous pockets. Probably up until really the 1990s, 2000s, this was the most famous pocket that a lot of folks knew. And a lot of these pieces were sold into the US, so this is what a lot of US collectors knew as well. The other famous pocket that was from Switzerland is, from the Gerstenegg tunnel. It's basically a place called, you'll see labels that say Summerloch. So really, Summerloch translates to summer season or summer silly season. I have never been able to confirm, but there's an area called Summerloch, and then also it's associated with Summerloch. You'll see on the labels, but it is the Gerstenegg tunnel, and it's basically a drainage tunnel, access tunnel for Kraftwerk Oberhausen. It's basically a hydroelectric system up on Grimsel Pass. And you can visit this today. There's a visitor center. You walk in through, you do the tour, and then they have these panels that they've sectioned off, and you can see that right in the middle. So you can peer into this cleft without it being disturbed. So it's sealed off. But once again, you can see here, the pink fluorites associated on the light clear quartz. And then right in the middle, right through there, is associated calcite, or they call it spar. And one of the things you'll see with a lot of fluorite finds, especially in Switzerland, you see a lot of calcite associated with it. For whatever reason, it's a good indicator in that area. So here's some of the pieces from that pocket. You can see they're very light pink fluorites associated right on the tips of the quartz crystals. And the caretaker for this was the Rufibach, right? Ernst Rufibach was the caretaker. And then associated with him family-wise was another Strahler, Caspar Farner. And they both had a lot of these in their collection because before they sealed it off, I guess they allowed them to take some pieces, and that's how we have some in the collecting community today. And then the most famous piece is this one right here. It's a large cabinet piece, and it was in Eric Asselborn's collection for the longest time. It was originally Caspar Farner's, went from Caspar Farner to Eric Asselborn, and from Eric Asselborn to the MIM Museum. So if you ever get to Beirut, Lebanon, you can see it in the MIM Museum. So, like I said, from 1966 into the 70s to into 1994 was the next great find within Switzerland. Okay, there's associated finds all along the time, and there are smaller finds, 5, 10 pieces, but not the quantity that these finds produced. And really, in 1994, in the summer, 2 Strahlers, it was Franz von Arx and Paul von Knell, started exploring on the Plangishstock, which is above the Gerstenegg Alps, which basically it's the Gerstenegg Alp Lake, and it's in the central air massif. So really, if you come south from Zurich, you go to Altdorf and then Gerstenegg just before you enter into the Gotthard Pass. So you go from there up, and that's where the Gerstenegg Alps is. And so as you go along the lake, right along to the left, about halfway around the lake, if you look straight up, then you'll see the Plangishstock, and it's a pretty extensive hike to get up into this area. Even though you see like down below here, you think it's not that steep in the valley. Trust me, that's really steep. And then this is sheer cliff where they're at. And there's 2 main quartz cleft systems. There's the top one and then the bottom one. And they really started off with the pocket in 1994 and then into present day. So you can see this is where they originally started, and you'll see a few quartz crystals over to the left there, kind of stacked outside like cordwood. So they got a lot of quartz crystals and a lot of single fluorites. Being this close to the surface, it was a lot of exposure, and so you don't get fresh pockets in that. Now, as we go through, you'll see some of the better pieces that are coming from way inside the mountain. So this is what it looks like there, and they've built basically a series of ladders to get up and down. And down below there, they have a cabin that they built in, a temporary structure. And every summer and even into the late fall, we show the snow here, they go and collect this. And there's now 3 Strahlers. So Franz von Arx and Paul von Knell's, they've gotten older, and they've enlisted Elio Mueller as well as part of their Strahler team. So those are the 3 of them. So Franz is on the left, Paul von Knell's is in the middle, and then Elio's on the right. And this is what it looks like now inside the tunnel. It's basically like a mine, think of it. But you have this, meter and a half thick quartz vein, and they really mine through it. And as you mine through it, it opens up into these structures, and these structures are cliff systems. And there's been 3 big major cliff systems, but then other ones associated. Not all of them had fluorite, but a lot of them had amazing quartz crystals. And they had a display in 2007 in Altdorf area. They had a display called Riesenkristal, which is giant crystal translated. And that's what it looks like. You can see some of these major quartz crystal plates. But we're not here to just talk about quartz. So as they got into some of these cliff systems, they also had fluorite in these giant quartz crystals. So you'll notice right down in here a cascade of pink fluorite crystals. And you can see the cliff system here, so you can see it opens up into a pocket on the left, and there's Franz holding a large quartz crystal. And this is what they found. So basically, to the left is really the initial start of those, the 1994, 95, 96. Those are the pink fluorites that came out. These are the later ones in the 2000s with the giant quartz crystal associated with the, studded with the pink fluorites. And then here's some of the other ones. These are early finds in the 1990s. The one on the right has an associated chlorite phantom in it, which is kind of interesting. And then as they got better in the 2000s, they got these giant quartz crystals with bigger studded fluorites on it. And this was in Marcus Boudille's booth in Tucson, if you ever saw that. And then finally, they get a lot better. So this was just recently found. It's a double terminated quartz crystal with a rather nice size pink fluorite. And you will see this in the MIM Museum sometime in the future. So every environment that we've talked about so far has been a granitic environment. And then there's other gneissic environments, and we talk about that. So the difference is granitic environments allow a lot of water to come through, especially in those leach granites. So the bad thing is that the enemy of fluorites is water. It really hurts the damage. It takes away from the crispness. The best fluorites, in my opinion, come from the gneissic environments from a quality standpoint of being fresh, because the gneissic environments don't allow that water transport to come through the rock as much. The other thing is that on the gneissic environments, there's two of them that we'll talk about. One of them being exposed gneissic environment, which is the front thorn on the north face. It's really permafrost most of the time, and that permafrost doesn't allow the transport of water. The second one that we'll talk about is more the quarries in Italy. So the nice thing about those is they're fresh rock, they're blasted in tens and hundreds of feet deep. You're getting fresh open-faced pockets. So a lot of people don't know about the front thorn, and to me, this is where the best quality fluorites in Switzerland come from. The only problem is they're not very big, and you'll see what I'm talking about. This is the environment. Once again, it's an alpine environment. It's pretty high, but it's not as high as some of the higher environments that you see in the Gerstenegg Alps and also over in the Mont Blanc massif. It's a really, really beautiful place, and I highly recommend if you ever get a chance to go visit this area, it's an amazing place. But you can see the environment that you're digging in. It's vertical cliffs, and the interesting thing about the front thorn environment is the cliff systems are vertical. They're not horizontal. So it makes it a lot harder to dig into. Here you'll see some of the pockets. This is from 2012. These are pockets that were dug by Alex Durungs, who probably hit what I'm going to talk about is my favorite pocket from the front thorn and probably my favorite pocket overall from Switzerland. Just like I said, it's a quality thing. It's not a size thing. It's a color thing too. And this is what I'm talking about. So the two pieces on the left and the right were found in September of 2000 by Alex Durungs. And this pocket is probably the best pocket that I know of that's come off the front thorn. It produced about 200 pieces, large plates, and 4 highly attractive combination plates. This is what I think, a lot of collectors dream of when they think of pink fluorite or red fluorite from the Alps. And these truly are like red fluorites. They're not pink. You can see they're gemmy in nature. They're highly lustrous, and they're just amazing pieces. So the one on the left is about 6 centimeters tall. The one on the right is a thumbnail. And then the nice one in the middle is from a different find from a different family, and that's about a 4 centimeter piece. But you could just see they're just fresh. They have a really great look to them, and they're just amazing in person to see. So this is the other area I was talking about. This is the Gerstenegg Alp, and as I mentioned to you before, this is the area where the Plangishstock is. So the Plangishstock is, if you look at the lake on the left-hand side, about halfway there where you'll see the waterfall coming down. If you go straight up, that's where the Plangishstock is. And then in behind there is the primary area for pink fluorites in the Gerstenegg Alp, and that's what they call the Dama Glacier. And there's a series of mountain peaks along there. And once again, where we want to find pink fluorites is one of two areas where the glaciers are receding. Because if you try and look lower down now, it's already been looked at. I mean, most of those areas are hard granite. They don't have a lot of mobile rock. It's hard to find a lot of stuff there. So you want to get into those quote-unquote spicy areas where you're getting rockfall. And it's a really interesting thing when you're on a glacier and all of a sudden you hear this whizzing by you, and a rock the size of a Volkswagen Bug hits the glacier. So, your little helmet that you wear isn't going to save you. But that's the environment that you're in. So this is the area of the Gerstenegg Alp, and I just talked about some of the miscellaneous finds from there. You could just see some of the associated finds there. The smoky quartzes are really great. And you can see some of these. These come from those one-off pockets, though, not the famous pockets that I was talking about. So those are all out of 3 different areas. And then the last find that really has been found in the Gerstenegg Alp is a couple years ago, this Feldstein area, and these etched pink fluorites with kind of actually bicolored. So they're pink, and then they have a bicolor white clear on top. And there's a lot of these found. So that's probably the most recent major find that you'll see a lot of pieces come out of. There's always finds happening. Everywhere you go, there's finds happening, but these aren't big pockets. And then the last but not least, a lot of famous finds you'll hear is the tunnels. So one of the things I'm showing here is an access tunnel. So this is one of those access tunnels for the water systems. So it can either be hydroelectric or fresh water. And this is a clef system right here. So as they access these tunnels and they blast through, on the sides, they get into these fresh pockets. And you get that fresh look fluorite. And there's numerous ones of these. You'll hear a lot of different ones, 60s, 50s. And I'll show you 2 of them. So the top one in the middle there is from the Goddard Pass tunnel, or Goddard Tunnel. And then the one on the right is from a lower area in Kraftwerk Goshen, the water district for Goshenen area. And it's almost impossible, unless you really know these and study them, to tell which one comes from what area. But the people that know, we see these all the time, we know. But a lot of them look very much similar. If you go to the museum in Bern, you'll see different ones, and it's almost impossible to tell where they come from. So another area that's a gneissic environment is an area called Valnops. So this is in an area that's more east of the Gerstenegg Alp. So if you go over Oberalp Pass into Tuech, and so this is the Surselva area. And if you go south of Sedrun, you'll get into the Valnops area. And 2 major finds there was in 1959. Probably the best pocket there is the one on the left. It's about an 8-9 centimeter piece that's in the museum in Bern. It has a pink core with a green overcoat. And then in the 1970s, the one on the right is from Rudolf Giossi, another Strahler. So those are just 2 unique finds that people know in Switzerland, but a lot of Americans never see. So next we're going to move over to the Mont Blanc massif, and 2 of the gentlemen that are Christier, René Gellini and Jean-Franc Charlet, are 2 of the most famous collectors over there. So in Switzerland, you'll call the crystal collectors, Strahlers, And then in France, they call them cristallier. My French is horrible, excuse me. But these are two of the most successful gentlemen, and they'll show you two of the most famous pockets that were found in the Mont Blanc massif. So first we'll talk about the 1988 or 1989 find on Ledroits. And any of you that have visited the Houston Museum of Nature and Science, they had one of these top three pieces in there for many, many years. But in 1989, it was a really hot summer, and these two gentlemen exposed a pocket up there on Ledroits. And these three famous pieces are huge, large cabinet pieces studded with these pink fluorites up to about 3 centimeters. So that's one of the major pieces. And then these are two of the other pieces there. The one on the left is the one that was in the Houston Museum for many, many years. Just incredible, incredible pieces. Next find we'll talk about is a more isolated find in 2006. Christophe Perret, who's one of the top crystal collectors in Mont Blanc area. He found a pocket in 2006, a place called Aiguille Verte. And you'll see that area has produced a lot of pink fluorites. But this piece he found, and he named it after one of his friends that passed away. Like we talked about, there's a lot of crystal collectors over there, alpinists, that unfortunately come to a short demise because either rocks hit them, they fall off cliffs, they just make mistakes. And then in the French area, you have a lot of crevasses that get a lot of people. So this is what this piece looks like here. It's a large cabinet piece, and I'd say those fluorites are up to about 5 centimeters. It's just an amazing piece. And this piece, a lot of times, like I said, the fluorites are compromised by water. I'm not sure that this piece really was compromised by water as much as it was just etched. You see a lot of chloride in the pocket, so it can interact with the fluorite and lose some of that crispness. The next find we'll talk about is the 1997 find at Point Curse. It's called a red pocket. I've always known it as that. I'm not sure that even René Gellini and Jean-Franc Charlet named it that, but that's kind of the name it's been given in the industry. And this is a pocket that if it wasn't compromised by water, probably maybe the greatest pocket ever of associated red fluorites with really deep, rich, smoky quartz. And it was found at a place called Point Curse. So once again, it's in that 3,600 meter area. And this is a really spiky, needly area where a lot of rock fall. So this area produces a lot of pockets, okay? And it was really exclusively dug a lot by René Gellini and Jean-Franc Charlet. I'll show you some of the pieces from this find. Just amazing, amazing pieces. So red fluorite on highly lustrous, gemmy, smoky quartz. So you get an idea. Now the other thing is that there was a couple pockets hit there, but the one main pocket. But you'll see one of the pockets that was hit there was this associated with these purple tips here. So that was I believe a different pocket in that zone. But all of them came out basically at the same time. And basically Eric Asselborn purchased the majority of the lot, brought them to Tucson, exhibited them with Wayne Thompson, and they sold them off immediately. So the last pocket that I'm going to talk about in the French Alps is the 2007 Aiguille Verte pocket. And this is probably by far the best pocket overall. And there's a couple reasons for that, okay? It's a really, really weird pocket in the fact that its structure is almost like a calcite vein that fills these voids. And you'll see what I'm talking about when I show the pocket. But you can see how very bounded that plane is. And it's because that calcite really bounded it, and it really isolated it, and it protected a lot of the fluorites. You'll see when I show you that. But this is the area, once again, that it comes from. This is the mountain, one of the most famous mountains in Switzerland. It's called Aiguille Verte. It stands for green needle in English. And it is a really, really, like I said, spicy area. You imagine being on that in the middle of summer with a lot of water coming down, the rock fall and the little pebbles whizzing by you, and trying to collect a pocket like that. So it's a pretty special area. So here is one of the gentlemen. Actually, I'm going to go back a little bit. So it was found by 3 gentlemen, Frederic Eva, Michel Bibolet, and Christophe Lalivre. I'm sorry, I can't really pronounce that name that well. But these 3 gentlemen basically found it in 2007 and have been working it off and on ever since. So here's some pockets. To the left over there is, that is Frederic Eva. And once again, if you look here, that's massive, massive calcite. So that's what I was talking about. It's a very, very, very unique cleft system. And it's not just one pocket that produced it. You're thinking it's just a cavern. No, it's actually multiple pocket systems within that planage. And I'll show you next this is what it looks like in that pocket. So this is massive calcite with adularia, and that's some of the fluorites that you see from there. It's pretty unique to see a pocket though. A lot of times these guys, they don't take pictures of these pockets, they don't show them. They're very secretive, and this is probably the most famous of all the finds in the Mont Blanc area. So here's some of the pictures that this is some of the pictures that Frederic Eva gave me. The middle one is a really nice one showing it just collected out of the pocket. But you can see they're really pretty pristine coming out of this calcite environment. And they did have smoky quartz there as well. So another picture of a couple. So you can see how steep the environment is on the right-hand side. That's at the cleft. And it's almost sheerly vertical with that ice glacier. And here's one of the strawlers right there, Michel, looking at his amazing finds on his table. So I'm going to show you some of the pieces. I talked about that originally they were found in 2007. The piece on the right here, that piece came out in August of 2009. So you can see they have to collect these pockets over a series of time. But they're just amazing because the luster that they have on them, the clarity, the gemminess, it sets itself apart. The piece on the left is about 10 centimeters across. To give you an idea, it's a pretty amazing piece. Here's some others. And then here's some other ones. So this is the display that they put in the museum in Chamonix. They put it on display when they found it, and this is some of their display. This is another one that I really love. It's the 3 together, amazing piece. You can see relative to the hand how large the size of that piece is. And that's at the point of discovery. Pretty amazing. And this is what it looks like cleaned up in the museum. Actually, that's at the Chamonix Mineral Show. I showed it. Another one with the switched quartz out of that pocket. And then the last one I'm going to show is my personal favorite out of this pocket. And you can see how it's growing on the matrix of calcite. And that's at the point of discovery. And that's what it looks like cleaned up. And one of the things is that each of these major pieces, the strawlers named them, And I think they named this one appropriately. They call it Venus. Some other miscellaneous French finds I'm just going to show you. More recently, a few years back, there was a find of these beautiful quartz crystals with associated purple fluorites, which is kind of unique for the Mont Blanc massif. And then in 2012, that piece on the right was found by a staller not from France. And then the piece in the middle is an older piece. Once again, the piece in the middle, you can see to the right, the matrix is calcite. Remember I said it's interesting that a lot of these pink fluorite pockets have associated spar or calcite with them. Here's some of the other finds that you can see. So, a lot of them you'll see is they have these smaller pink fluorites. Those are 2, 3, 4 millimeter size pink fluorites on the left over a quartz crystal. In the middle, you'll see a modified octahedron, which is kind of a unique piece. And then once again, on the right, you'll see modified octahedrons growing over smoky, but that was more compromised once again by water. You'll see the luster is lost there. And then we'll move on from France and we'll go to some of the more obscure ones. A lot of times people don't realize that there's huge pink fluorites found in Austria. And it's called Schrammacher, and this is in the northwest face of the Vals Valley, and it's in Tyrol. So there's the gentleman collecting right on the sheer cliff right here. And there's one of the largest pink fluorites that he found. And I'll show you some other additional ones there. A lot of people don't know the Austrian ones very well. And then moving on, a lot of people know the green Austrian ones. I've seen these. These are from the 1950s. There was a tunnel, once again, built for a hydroelectric power station, and it's the Bachstein Tunnel. And they drilled in and they found this pocket with these amazing green fluorites associated over quartz and some calcite. Another one. And then we'll end our tour, as I said, with those gneiss quarries in Buera, Italy. So if you come out of Switzerland, you go south, you'll see a lot of these quarries are made for building stone. Gneiss is really hard. Like we talked about, it doesn't allow water to permeate it really well. So it's a great building material for those famous cobblestone, walking areas and roads that you see in Switzerland and in Italy. And this just shows some of the quarries. This here shows a highlight. Sorry, it's a little bit blacked out there, but you'll see here there's a brown area there and some of these brown areas there. They don't like these areas because those areas are pocket areas. Okay, and those pocket areas compromise the building stone, the quality. So they try and get rid of those, and you'll see where they're slabbing off there, one of the slabs with the pocket, but that's where we love as mineral collectors to get in there before they compromise those pockets by disregarding them as rubbish. And in these areas, they find some of the most amazing octahedral fluorites on matrix because they're fresh. And I'll show you a couple pieces from there. So these are the greens that they get from there. And they get green and they get pink. It depends on the quarry. There's multiple quarries, but the greens are just amazing. They sit on this gneissic matrix, and you can see the luster, and they're very fresh. And then I'll end with the last one, is this pink one. And that pink one is in the collection of Bill Larson. It went to a gentleman who was a German collector, dealer, and then from there it went to Bill Larson. It's an amazing piece, aesthetics and everything. So that gives you basically an overview of the fluorite finds of the Alps. I try to cover the most famous finds. I didn't cover all the finds for you. And certainly I'm not going to say that I showed you the best, because as I said, there's a lot of secrecy in this Alpine world. So, but with that being said, you got a really good taste of some of the most famous finds and what's out there available. I can take any questions you may have. Otherwise, that concludes my presentation for the day.